Do you know what it's like to pray for someone for 17 years, without answers, without signs, without giving up? Do you know the quiet ache of watching someone you love walk further and further from the truth while you hold your ground on your knees? She did, every single day, through years of tears and unwavering prayer. This is the story of Saint Monica, the faithful mother of Saint Augustine. Chapter 1. A child of faith in Tagaste. The sun rose gently over the hills of Tagaste, casting a golden light over its dusty streets and olive groves. In a modest home tucked within this Roman town, a baby girl named Monica was born. Her family was part of a growing Christian community in Numidia, quietly devoted in a world still shaped by pagan customs. From the start, Monica's life was set apart, not by wealth or prestige, but by a faith that would guide her every step. Even as a child, Monica carried herself with a calm seriousness beyond her years. While others played noisily in the courtyards, she often sat quietly beside her mother, listening to prayers. There was a kind of watchfulness in her eyes, a sense that she was already learning the weight of love, of service, of quiet obedience. In a time when few girls were educated deeply, Monica absorbed her faith not from books, but from the living witness of her family and community. One of the strongest influences in her early years was an elderly servant woman in the household, wise, God-fearing, and tender-hearted. She became a kind of spiritual guide, teaching Monica through small things, how to hold her tongue when angry, how to give gently without expecting anything in return, how to pray from the heart. The old woman never preached, she lived, and Monica watched, learned, and followed. From a young age, Monica practiced a kind of quiet self-denial. When sweet treats were offered, she often shared hers with a sibling or simply declined. She ate moderately, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to master her body and soul. No one forced these habits on her. They flowed naturally from her longing to be close to God. She seemed to understand, even in childhood, that discipline was not punishment, but a path to freedom. She found joy in prayer. Whether in the early morning light or late at night when the household slept, Monica would whisper simple words to God. Sometimes she prayed for her family, sometimes she just sat in silence, sensing a presence greater than herself. These moments were not dramatic, but in the stillness, something deep was taking root, a trust that would carry her through years of sorrow to come. Tagaste was no great city of the empire, yet in its humble confines, grace was at work. Monica's life did not begin with visions or miracles. It began with a little girl lighting oil lamps for evening prayers, helping her mother serve bread, watching her elders bow their heads in faith. Holiness, in her case, did not arrive with trumpets, but in the quiet repetition of good, day after day. And so her story began not with grandeur, but with quiet readiness. Monica could not yet know the trials that awaited her, a difficult marriage, a wayward son, decades of tears. But already, in the stillness of her childhood, God was preparing her for a love that would not give up and a faith that would not let go. Chapter 2. An unequal marriage. Monica was still very young, just entering womanhood, when her parents arranged her marriage to Patricius, a Roman official of Tagaste. He was respected in civic affairs but had little interest in the Christian faith. A pagan by belief and fiery by nature, Patricius was known for his temper and indulgent lifestyle. Monica, raised in prayer and virtue, found herself bound to a man who did not share her values or her vision of marriage. From the first days of their life together, Monica encountered trial. Patricius ruled the household with pride and often spoke with cruelty. He did not understand Monica's silence in prayer or her self-restraint in daily life. She endured harsh words and moments of neglect, but never responded with bitterness. Her strength was quiet, rooted in patience, not protest. In every small act, she chose peace over pride, and held firm to the faith that shaped her soul. One of her greatest challenges came not from her husband, but from her mother-in-law, who lived with them. The older woman saw Monica as an outsider and treated her with coldness. Criticism came often and affection rarely. Yet Monica never allowed resentment to take root. She served her mother-in-law with care, met unkindness with gentleness. Over time, small gestures of love began to wear down walls built by suspicion. In the midst of these hardships, Monica became a mother. She gave birth to several children, including a bright and spirited boy named Augustine. While Patricius insisted that the children be raised in Roman tradition, Monica quietly taught them the ways of her faith. She prayed over them, sang hymns to them, and whispered truths about God when the house grew quiet. Though her influence was hidden, her maternal love was tireless and sincere. Her life was far from easy, yet Monica never allowed sorrow to define her. Each day, she woke with purpose to serve, to pray, to love, and to endure. Her marriage, though painful, became a daily offering. She fasted in secret, made almsgiving a habit, and entrusted everything to God. Monica's love was not loud or demanding. It was faithful, enduring, and rooted in hope. Through trial, she was being shaped into a vessel of grace. With time, her quiet witness began to affect those around her. Neighbors who once whispered pity began to admire her strength. Her mother-in-law softened, gradually responding to the kindness that never faded. Even Patricius, though not yet converted, grew more respectful. He could not deny the peace Monica carried or the goodness in her actions. Without preaching a word, she had become a living testimony to the power of Christian virtue. Monica did not seek to change others by force. She believed change began in the heart and that only God could truly transform a soul. Her task was to remain faithful, no matter the cost. In a home marked by conflict and misunderstanding, Monica stood as a quiet beacon, illuminating the way not through power, but through prayer, patience, and unwavering love. Chapter 3. A Wife's Silent Witness. Monica's life continued in a steady rhythm of sacrifice and prayer. The household she managed was not peaceful by nature, but she brought peace to it by presence. Day after day, she rose early to prepare meals, tend to her children, and bear the sharpness of Patricius's temper without complaint. She was not passive, she was rooted. Her strength lay in her ability to love without conditions, to remain steady without being seen. Her example began to speak more loudly than words ever could. Patricius, though still distant from faith, began to notice the consistency in her actions. Monica was never spiteful, never boastful. She fulfilled her duties with care, raised her children with warmth, and met insult with gentleness. There was no self-righteousness in her. Instead, there was something deeply attractive about the serenity she carried, a kind of grace that slowly unsettled his hardened heart. She found small ways to live her faith even when it was not welcomed. She fasted without drawing attention. She slipped away to church when possible. She taught her children to say small prayers, even if Patricius preferred Roman customs. In all things, she sought balance, never provoking, never hiding, but always remaining faithful. It was not defiance. It was quiet fidelity, the kind that wins trust without ever demanding it. In time, the climate of the home began to shift. Her mother-in-law, once so harsh, began to look to Monica with respect and affection. The coldness softened into warmth. Monica, through unchanging love, had changed what conflict could not. This healing within the household was not instant, it took years, but Monica believed that time, offered to God, would always bear fruit. Her hope was not in the moment, but in the promise. Among her children, Augustine soon revealed himself to be intelligent, curious, and difficult to guide. Patricius admired the boy's gifts and hoped for a successful future. Monica, however, feared for his soul. She prayed over him with trembling hands, sensing that the greatest battle of her life would not be with her husband but for her son. Yet even in this concern, she did not let fear overwhelm her faith. Eventually, illness visited Patricius. In his final days, something long resisted began to yield. He had seen Monica's faith in every season: when she was young, when she was exhausted, when she had been mistreated, and still remained faithful. Moved not by arguments but by her life, he asked to be baptized. Monica stood by him as he received the sacrament, tears in her eyes, not of sorrow but of fulfillment. She had prayed for this moment for years. Now it had come, not with fanfare, but with quiet grace. Her husband, once so distant from her faith, had entered into it fully. Monica had not converted him through force or debate, but through the silent testimony of her life. She had loved him as he was, and in time, that love had opened the way for God to do the rest. Chapter 4. The Wayward Son. As Augustine entered his teenage years, his brilliance became impossible to ignore. Monica, proud yet cautious, watched her son flourish in learning. He was sent to study in Madaura, a nearby city known for its schools. There, his mind expanded rapidly, but so did his pride. Ambitious, eloquent, and hungry for praise, Augustine began to drift from the quiet faith his mother had planted in him since childhood. After Madaura, Augustine moved to the larger city of Carthage, where the intellectual life dazzled him. The city offered everything he craved: rhetoric, debate, and freedom from restraint. He immersed himself in literature and philosophy, but also in pleasures of the flesh. He entered into a relationship with a woman outside marriage, and they would later have a son together. Monica, back in Tagaste, received the news not in anger, but in aching silence. She prayed through sleepless nights, her heart torn between love and grief. Her son, once so close, had embraced a life she could hardly recognize. He laughed at her faith, called the church naive, and followed the teachings of the Manichaeans, a sect that denied the goodness of creation and mocked Christian doctrine. Monica was devastated. It wasn't just that Augustine was living in sin, it was that he had chosen to reject Christ. One day, when Augustine returned home briefly, Monica tried to speak to him, to reason with him, to beg him to reconsider, but his heart was closed, his words sharp. In a moment of despair, she told him to leave, refusing to let him eat or sleep under her roof. It was the only time she ever pushed him away. That night, she wept more bitterly than ever before. Had she lost him completely? But grace never left her. In prayer, she was convicted not to give up, but to persist. She welcomed him back with quiet dignity, saying little, but praying much. She followed him not physically, but spiritually, entrusting his soul to God, even when all seemed lost. Her love did not condone his choices, but neither did it abandon him. It became something purer, mercy, in the face of rebellion. Around that time, Monica spoke with a priest, confiding her fears and heartbreak. He listened, then gently smiled. "It is not possible," he said, "that the son of so many tears should be lost." Those words struck her like light in darkness. She clung to them, repeating them in her heart every time despair returned. She had no power to change Augustine, but she knew the one who did. Monica's battle was now fought in silence and prayer. She fasted more, prayed longer, and offered every sorrow as a plea for her son's conversion. Her heart was breaking, but her hope never died. The world saw a brilliant young philosopher. She saw a lost soul and a promise not yet fulfilled, and she would not stop praying until God answered. Chapter 5. The Pilgrimage of a Mother's Heart. Augustine's thirst for knowledge had taken him far from home, and further still from faith. Monica watched helplessly as he embraced philosophies that denied God and indulged in pleasures that dulled the soul. When he announced his intention to study in Carthage, she did not stand in his way. But once there, he sank deeper into error. Monica followed, hoping her presence might anchor him. Yet her words seemed to pass through him like wind through trees. In Carthage, Monica endured humiliation in silence. Her son lived openly with a concubine and mocked the church she loved. She did not argue with him, she prayed. She fasted. She offered every moment of pain as a plea for his return. Even when he resisted her presence, she remained in the background, quietly laboring for his soul. Hers was not the love of control, it was the love that endures rejection and still does not retreat. Then came the cruelest wound yet. Augustine, now a young man of rising reputation, announced his plan to leave for Rome. He promised to travel soon and even told Monica he would bring her along. But while she slept one night in prayer, he boarded a ship and sailed away. She awoke to find her son gone, her hope momentarily shattered. He had not just left Africa, he had left her behind. But grief did not keep her still. Monica rose from the harbor, where she had wept, and made a decision few would have dared. She would follow him again. Though seas separated them, her heart remained bound to his. She secured passage to Rome, enduring storm and sickness along the way. Her body weakened, but her spirit burned brighter. She whispered his name in prayer with every wave that struck the boat. Upon reaching Rome, her hopes were dashed once more. Augustine had moved on this time to Milan, chasing opportunity and fame. Monica might have collapsed under the weight of disappointment, but she did not. She rested briefly, then began again. The path from Rome to Milan was long and difficult, but for Monica, each mile was an offering. She did not pursue her son to argue with him, she pursued him to stay close while God worked. She traveled not with bitterness, but with surrender. Each step, each coin spent, each wound on her feet became part of her intercession. She wasn't chasing Augustine, she was walking a path of mercy, praying, trusting, believing. Many would have judged her persistence as foolish, but she knew something deeper. No soul is ever truly lost while a mother still prays. When she reached the outskirts of Milan, Monica did not imagine what lay ahead. She had no grand plan, no strategy, only faith. Faith that the God who had sustained her this far would not abandon her now. She tightened her cloak, lifted her eyes, and took the last steps toward a city she had never known. Her son was there, and so, she believed, was grace. Chapter 6. Meeting Saint Ambrose. Milan was unlike anything Monica had known. A city of wealth and intellect, power and politics, it was also a place of spiritual tension. But Monica did not come for comfort. She came to pray. She found lodging, settled quietly, and resumed the rhythm of intercession. Her eyes searched crowds for her son, but more than that, her soul sought signs of God's movement. She knew she was not alone in this city, he was near. There she heard of a man named Ambrose, the city's bishop. A former governor turned priest, Ambrose was respected for his intellect, his eloquence, and his holiness. Monica began attending his sermons, and so did Augustine, at first drawn by style, not content. But the word of God, once heard, does not return empty. Slowly, Monica saw a change. Augustine no longer mocked, he listened. Monica approached Ambrose not as a grieving mother, but as a woman of faith. She shared her sorrow, not with drama, but with deep conviction. Ambrose saw in her a soul refined by suffering, a mother whose prayers had weight. He offered her not just words of comfort, but companionship in prayer. His now famous reply would become a lifeline. It is not possible that the son of so many tears should perish. Augustine, still clinging to false beliefs, began to ask deeper questions. Ambrose, a master of scripture and reason, answered without force. He dismantled the lies Augustine had trusted with patience and wisdom. Monica watched the walls her son had built begin to crack, not from confrontation, but from light seeping in. She said little, but her eyes saw everything. Monica's days in Milan followed a quiet pattern. She rose early to pray, visited the poor, fasted regularly, and attended every liturgy she could. She did not debate Augustine, nor did she pressure him. Her love had matured, it no longer pushed, it simply waited. In Ambrose, she saw a shepherd strong enough to challenge her son, and tender enough to walk with her in the waiting. Augustine did not convert overnight. His questions lingered, and his attachments held tight. But Monica could see it now. His soul was restless. He had once been so sure, so stubborn. Now, he paused. He stayed in the church longer. He asked questions he never asked before. Monica no longer begged God for miracles. She thanked him for motion. In Milan, Monica had found more than her son. She had found the beginning of God's answer. Not the end, but the turn, the shift in wind, the trembling before the breakthrough. She did not know when or how it would come, but she knew with certainty the hour of grace was drawing close, and this time she would not have to walk alone. Chapter 7. A Soul in Labor. Augustine's world was growing heavier. He had spent years chasing knowledge and pleasure, but now the weight of it all pressed down on him. Truth no longer seemed distant, it was uncomfortably near, yet he could not grasp it. His mind had begun to assent to Christianity, thanks to Ambrose's clear teaching, but his heart lagged behind. He feared the cost of surrender and clung to the chains he claimed to hate. He wandered between lectures and long silences, feeling hollow. He admired Christian virtue, yet lived in a way that contradicted it. His soul teetered between pride and longing, desiring purity, yet fearing what it would demand. He often told himself he would change, but not now. He wished for clarity, for a sign, but mostly he wished the tension would go away. But it didn't. It deepened. Monica noticed the change, though Augustine spoke little of it. She saw it in the way he paused after Mass, in the quiet questions he sometimes asked, in the way his laughter had lost its sharp edge. She said nothing. She only prayed more fervently. Her fasting grew stricter, her nights longer, her acts of charity more frequent. She sensed something unseen, like a storm, gathering behind calm skies. Augustine tried to distract himself with work and philosophy, but nothing satisfied. What once thrilled him now rang hollow. He read the works of Plato and Cicero, but their wisdom stopped short of healing. He admired Ambrose's intellect, but was disturbed by his peace. Everywhere he turned, he saw reflections of what he lacked. It was not knowledge he needed, it was transformation, but he did not yet know how to choose it. At times, the pressure broke into anger. He grew impatient, restless, even cruel with himself. He confessed to friends that he was divided inside, torn between who he was and who he was meant to be. "I was in misery," he would later write, "but I held on to my misery because I feared something greater might be asked of me." His will was weak, and yet his thirst for peace would not leave him. Monica knew better than to interfere. She had spent too many years trying to push and persuade. Now she simply stayed close. She believed that God was working in the silence, that the wrestling of Augustine's soul was not wasted, but necessary. Her tears still fell, but they were no longer desperate. They were full of trust. The battle was raging, yes, but she knew who would win. And so she waited. She waited through dark nights and cold mornings, through signs that seemed to fade and reappear. She waited like a woman near the door of the delivery room, knowing pain must come before birth. Her son was close, not yet free, not yet whole, but close. And as the labor of his soul intensified, so did her prayers, for she knew grace does not come without struggle. Chapter 8. The Great Conversion. The sun was high, but Augustine's soul felt like night. He had reached the breaking point, pulled between longing and fear, between truth and the chains of his past. That day, he sat in the garden behind his friend's home, with his companion Alypius nearby. Unable to hold back the turmoil inside, Augustine broke down in tears. He staggered away to a fig tree, hid his face, and wept like a child. He cried not because he was confused, but because he was finally clear. He knew what God was asking. He had seen the beauty of truth, tasted the edge of grace, and still hesitated. His whole being trembled with the weight of that choice. He asked himself, "How much longer will I say, 'Tomorrow, tomorrow'?" His soul was in labor, and it could no longer bear delay. In the midst of that storm, a sound broke through, the silence light and strange. It was the voice of a child, or perhaps several, coming from a nearby house, repeating the words, "Tolle lege, tolle lege, take and read, take and read." It was not a chant he recognized, but he took it as a command not from earth, but from heaven. Shaken, he returned to the bench where he had left his book. He picked up the scriptures and opened to the first passage his eyes met. It was from the letter to the Romans. "Let us live honorably, as in the day, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make no provision for the flesh." In that moment, the words pierced his heart. All doubt vanished, all excuses fell silent. The choice had been made. Augustine would later say that it was not he who chose God, but God who had chosen him and waited. From that moment, the old self began to die. He returned to Alypius and told him what had happened. Together, they wept, not tears of despair, but of freedom. That night, the world looked different, not because it had changed, but because Augustine had. Grace had finally been allowed in. Monica was not present in the garden. She did not hear the child's voice or see the tears. But when Augustine came home, she saw it in his eyes. Something eternal had entered him. He no longer fought her prayers, he fulfilled them. Monica wept again, but these were not the tears of a mother in sorrow. They were the tears of a mother whose faith had held through 17 years of darkness. For Monica, nothing more was needed. She had asked for one thing all her life, that her son would return to God. Now, that prayer had been answered not in part, but completely. Her journey was not over, but her deepest hope had been fulfilled. In that garden in Milan, God had done what Monica could not, and the boy she had born in the flesh had now been born again in the spirit. Chapter 9. A Mother's Joy Fulfilled. The waters of baptism fell gently on Augustine's forehead, but for Monica, it was as if heaven itself had opened. On the Easter Vigil of 387, in the Cathedral of Milan, her son knelt before Bishop Ambrose and became, fully and forever, a child of God. He was no longer the restless wanderer she had wept for. He was now a Christian, a man remade in grace. And for Monica, that moment was everything. Beside him stood Alypius, also receiving baptism, and at the edge of the gathering, Monica stood silently, tears on her face, not from sorrow, but from awe. She did not need to speak. Her entire life was speaking. Years of fasting, tears, and unspoken prayers had led to this night. It was not loud, but it was glorious. Her heart, so often heavy, was now full and still. After the baptism, Augustine chose to lay aside his worldly ambitions. He resigned from his post as teacher of rhetoric and embraced a life of reflection, study, and prayer. Monica did not question his decision. She had never wanted him to be famous, only faithful. In the quiet days that followed, mother and son walked together through gardens, sat together at meals, and shared a peace they had never known before. Later that year, they prepared to return home to North Africa. On the journey south, they stopped at the port town of Ostia to wait for a ship. It was there, in the stillness of those days, that Monica and Augustine shared a conversation that would remain etched in eternity. They sat at a window, looking out over a courtyard, speaking not of earth but of heaven. It was not a goodbye, but a glimpse beyond. Monica spoke softly, with a tone Augustine had never heard before. "Son," she said, "my hope in this world is now fulfilled. There is nothing more I desire. All I ever wanted was for you to return to God, and He has granted it. What am I still doing here?" Augustine was quiet. He had nothing to add. Her words were not dramatic. They were simple and eternal. In that moment, Monica seemed to belong less to the world and more to the life beyond. She had completed her pilgrimage, not just the physical one that had taken her across continents, but the spiritual one that had brought her through heartbreak, perseverance, and grace. She no longer feared death. She welcomed it not as an end, but as a return to the God she had loved all her life. A few days later, Monica fell ill. She asked for nothing except that she be remembered at the altar of God. "Bury me wherever you wish," she told Augustine. "Just remember me before the Lord." She was not afraid. She was at peace. Her joy was complete. The soul she had prayed for was safe, and that was all she ever needed. Chapter 10. The Death of a Saint. It came without drama, quietly, like the closing of a well-loved book. Monica fell ill just days after she and Augustine arrived in Ostia. There was no panic in her voice, no fear in her eyes. She knew the journey of her soul was nearly complete. She had followed her son across seas and cities, across years of pain and hope. Now she stood at the threshold of eternity, ready. Augustine stayed near her bedside, watching as the strength slowly faded from her body but not from her spirit. She spoke little, but her peace said more than words ever could. Her face, though pale with fever, bore a kind of quiet radiance. There was no need for goodbyes. Everything essential had already been said in prayers, in tears, in long walks and quiet meals. What remained now was only waiting. One afternoon, sensing her time was near, Monica called Augustine to her side. Her voice was soft but steady. "Son," she said, "you may bury me wherever you wish. It doesn't matter. Only remember me at the altar of the Lord." There was no clinging to place, no wish for a grand tomb. Her heart was set elsewhere, not in the earth, but in heaven. What mattered most was the eternal bond sealed in Christ. Augustine wept, not as a man without hope, but as a son who loved deeply. He had grieved her suffering in years past now. He grieved her departure, yet even in sorrow, he knew this was holy ground. Monica was not dying defeated. She was returning home, her soul unburdened, her mission fulfilled. In her final hours, she was as she had always been, steady, surrendered, and full of grace. The moment of her passing was gentle. There was no struggle, only stillness. Her hands, once lifted in prayer for her lost son, now rested peacefully. Her lips, which had whispered so many petitions, fell silent. But the silence was not empty. It was full of completion, of promise, of glory. Monica died not with regret, but with joy. She had seen God's mercy, and it was enough. They buried her there in Ostia, near the port she had never left. The sea she had crossed to reach her son now sang beside her resting place. Augustine would later write of her death, not as an end, but as a beginning of her life with God, of his own journey in the church. He mourned, yes, but with the heart of a man who had witnessed the triumph of grace. Monica's life was never marked by fame or miracles. Her holiness was hidden in kitchens, in tears, in whispered prayers behind closed doors. But in the eyes of God, she was radiant. And in the memory of her son, she was forever a saint, not because she was perfect, but because she had loved without ceasing, believed without seeing, and hoped until the very end. Chapter 11. Canonization and Legacy. Monica never sought recognition. Her life was one of hidden sacrifices, silent prayers, and enduring love. Yet, long after her death, the Church began to speak her name with reverence. Though she was never formally canonized by a papal decree, such procedures did not yet exist in her time. She was venerated as a saint by the early Christian community. Her life bore the unmistakable mark of holiness. It was Augustine who ensured her memory would never fade. In his Confessions, he wrote not only of his own conversion, but of the mother whose tears helped bring it about. He told the world of her patience, her unrelenting love, and her unwavering faith. He painted her not as a martyr of suffering, but as a woman crowned by grace. Through his words, Monica stepped into the heart of Christian memory. Over time, devotion to Monica spread throughout the Church. She became known as the patroness of Christian mothers, especially those with wayward children. Her story resonated with women across generations, those who waited at doorways, wept in silence, and prayed for the return of someone they loved. Monica became a symbol of hope, not because she was spared sorrow, but because she endured it faithfully. Her feast day, now celebrated on August 27, is placed in the Church calendar just before that of her son, Augustine. The closeness of their days reflects the closeness of their souls, bound not only by blood, but by grace. When the Church remembers Augustine's brilliance, it remembers Monica's prayers. When it honors his sainthood, it honors the quiet strength that made it possible. Today, churches, schools, and religious communities across the world bear her name. Statues depict her with a tear on her cheek and a hand lifted in prayer. Stained glass windows show her watching Augustine from afar, or kneeling at a chapel in silent hope. In every image, she is still interceding not just for her son, but for all who feel helpless in the face of spiritual distance. Her legacy is more than historical. It is deeply present. In every chapel where a mother lights a candle for her child, Monica is there. In every confession where someone returns after years away, her prayer echoes. Her story continues not because it ended well, but because it points beyond endings to redemption itself. She teaches that no soul is too far and no prayer too late. The Church calls her Saint Monica, not because of miracles wrought in public, but because of faith lived in private. Her sainthood is written not in proclamations, but in generations of lives touched by her witness. She is the saint of the waiting, the weeping, the faithful. And through her, the Church continues to learn. Love never gives up, and grace never lets go. Chapter 12. A Prayer to Saint Monica. O Saint Monica, faithful mother and woman of unwavering prayer, we turn to you with confidence. You carried sorrow in your heart for many years, yet you never allowed discouragement to overcome your trust in God. Teach us to remain faithful when our prayers seem unanswered, and help us believe that God is always at work, even when we cannot yet see the fruit of His grace. Saint Monica, you prayed with tears for the conversion of your beloved son, Augustine. Intercede for all parents who grieve because their children have wandered away from Christ, abandoned the faith, or chosen paths that bring pain and confusion. Give them patience, courage, and hope, so that they may continue to love without condemning and pray without losing heart. You also endured difficulties within your marriage and responded not with bitterness, but with patience, gentleness, and perseverance. Pray for husbands and wives who carry hidden wounds, misunderstandings, or loneliness in their homes. May they receive the grace to forgive, to speak with charity, and to trust that God can restore what seems broken. Saint Monica, teach us the power of persistent prayer. When we are tempted to give up because nothing appears to change, remind us of your long years of waiting. Help us surrender our loved ones into the hands of God, trusting that His mercy can reach even the most distant heart and that no soul is beyond the transforming power of grace. Pray especially for those who have turned away from the Church, for those who doubt God's love, and for those searching for meaning in the wrong places. Through your intercession, may their hearts become open to truth, and may Christ place faithful witnesses along their path, just as He placed Saint Ambrose in the life of Augustine. Saint Monica, obtain for us a deeper love for Christ and His Church. Help us become people of prayer within our families, carrying others before God with humility, rather than trying to control their journey. May our words be gentle, our example sincere, and our hope rooted not in our own strength, but in the goodness and mercy of the Lord. O holy Saint Monica, faithful mother and powerful intercessor, remain close to all who wait, weep, and pray for someone they love. Present our intentions before the Lord, strengthen us in times of discouragement, and lead our families ever closer to Jesus Christ. May we one day rejoice together in the eternal home of heaven, where every tear is wiped away and every faithful prayer finds its fulfillment. Amen.